23, 20,
He's doing the countdown.
according to the Mickey Mouse.
Is he gonna be late? Do you know? Macklin?
Mickey's big hand. Okay. Good answer. Okay. Tab A, item number 1. That's Vicki Coleman, and Vicki is not here. Okay, moving on to
When Attorney gets here.
yeah. Vicki is item 3 is also Vicki.
Yeah, all three of those are.
Item 4 is Vicki. Moving on to tab.
I guess I better silence mine.
Talk to us about a dump truck.
Since you're in trouble, I don't want to get in trouble. You have to silence my watch now. Is it not on?
Okay, Mayor and Council, good afternoon. We got a budgeted item for a Class 7 dump truck to replace one of our 3. All 3 are in pretty bad shape, but going to start out with trying to get one this year. Checked with our local Ford dealer. They cannot sell this series of trucks, although we can get parts and service there if we need it, which is a bonus. There is only one state contract holder left for the F-750 Ford trucks, and that's Wade Ford, and they've been very helpful. And we've spent some time looking at several dump truck bodies and came up with a custom-built one that I think will suit our needs real well. I think I've shown those pictures in your packet where it'll help us to fill the sides of the roads where the shoulders need work in a more timely fashion and be safer to keep people off from behind the truck when they're doing it. This is in the same line item as a compactor truck, and the low bid on this vehicle was the $77,049. That's the truck and the dump body installed and delivered to us. That will include all the emergency lighting, and it's ready to go to work. I wished I had more bids to give you other than the 2, but the other one was the state contract was for a Freightliner truck. They stopped carrying the Fords this year, and I'd rather keep our fleet unified if we can. Besides, the other truck was about $10,000.
Are we talking about item 1 right now still?
Yes, sir, item 1.
Charlie, is this a
cost. It also makes it to where we can handle everything in-house on maintenance. Right now with these 3 older trucks that are diesel, they're 2005 models, we're spending $3,000 to $4,000 a month on maintenance cost outsourcing. We neither have the equipment or the personnel to take care of them, and all 3 of them are, one of the 3 are nearly in the shop all the time now. They are 12 years old. Last time we bought these, we replaced 3 trucks that were 8 years old, so these have really gone a long time.
How much is the truck we want to buy?
It is, the low bid truck was $77,049.
Charlie, this
I have a couple different ways I'd like to look at it, but yeah, of the 3 trucks, next year, if not sooner, we're gonna need to replace the other 2 dump trucks. I have one, the chipper truck right now is in the shop, and we're patching it together pending the outcome of this meeting. It is just about nothing left to do but put an engine in it that's gonna cost roughly $16,000. And it just, just to put a set of injectors and a fuel pump on a diesel engine is $5,000 or $6,000. Well, we go to these V10 Ford motors that they're now putting back in the dump trucks. We can buy a complete engine and replace it for that kind of money in-house. It's just going to make it to where we can, normally a diesel truck will go 400,000 miles, no problems if it's on the road, traveling on the interstate up and down the road, but when we're traveling in the neighborhoods and they're constantly in low gear, they're all over 200,000 miles now, and they're just worn out.
And this was a budget.
Compactor truck is one line item, and have that total here.
I'm not seeing the one that has 77,000 on it. I'm seeing 83,000.
Under item 1, low bid.
Okay.
There's $221,000 totaled on one line item for this dump truck and a trash compactor truck.
Oh, back in that beyond line.
And the trash compactor truck is the second item that we want to talk about, but
I don't see the bid in here.
So both of those are listed together on the budget?
they're
Is
listed
that the
together
2
on one
items?
line item. They're
Yeah.
2 items, but they're combined with one total.
And when you combine them, I know you want to talk about that in a second, but when you combine them, is that the number for the budget?
I think we come in a little bit under that, or underneath it.
I thought that's what.
83 and 77.
Yeah.
I'm curious, what do we need a compactor truck for?
Well, we hadn't,
Oh, we're getting to that.
yeah, we hadn't got.
Sorry.
I do have some talking points on that, and I would like to discuss it
You
because,
gonna start collecting garbage, are you?
Well, let's get by.
Someone who's not a dump truck specialist, just the way you lay the facts out here and the explanations
Right.
and everything else, I find extremely helpful, and that we can save money here getting it worked on at Dunridge. I appreciate that information, so it helps me make a good decision, I hope.
thank you.
I agree. Thank you, Charlie.
Any further questions on that?
I tried to convince the street department manager to come. He did not want to. But I have a pretty good take on it if you'll indulge me for a minute.
Pete, feel free.
David agreed that it would save with not making quite so many trips to the dump. My they're easily compactable. Obviously, you can't put a piece of furniture or a television set or something
You'd have
like that.
trouble with the couch, wouldn't you?
It would. And, but that and although it may take time to do it, I don't think it's going to save any money.
I don't see
Those are
that.
the large items.
The large items
It's a-
still, right.
Yeah, you gotta be very selective what you can put in the
They're
compactor.
very selective, and the maintenance on those compactor trucks can be very expensive. There's a lot of moving parts, there's a lot of multiple hydraulic cylinders that are gonna wear and leak and have
It
problems.
sound like you two gun-ho on a compactor truck.
From a mechanical standpoint, I am not.
Charlie, I wanted you to mention too about after we went to looking at the pricing and the capacity of these units, we're limited with our CDL drivers as well. We could get a much larger capacity truck for a little bit more money, but since we're in the situation we are right now, I think that we're kind of leaning more toward if we replace this with another dump truck, that may better serve us. So,
Okay. So we do,
The compact a non-CDL truck. I mean, we all think of a trash truck, or I do, the size of something like Waste Industries has. This will be half that size. The capacity of these trucks, the biggest we can get that can be done with a non-CDL driver is 11 cubic yards. If you look at the two dumpsters in front of the Avani building, that's 12 cubic yards. That's not very big. And that's compacted size. So that's not going to hold a whole lot. And, where a Waste Industries truck is a 25-yard truck.
so
I can come within $10,000 of that price with this money, and by selling one of the older of the three dump trucks, I can make up, I will be short $10,147 exactly if we buy three new dump trucks this year with this line item. The sale, I will get at least $15,000 out of the salvage truck. It'll more than make up for it. We have also, may have to ask Sarah, but I think we've saved about $20,000 on the light item for a service truck in the water distribution department that is currently in at Ford. That came in $20,000 less than was budgeted.
well, here's the,
Buy a compactor truck, and this was, at that time, I wasn't nearly as involved with the street department as I am now. I wasn't fully over that when we were doing the budget meetings. This was back in October, November, and we desperately need three trucks. I have one of those three trucks in the shop all the time.
okay. So you're,
I really see it being a maintenance nightmare, and I don't see that the size of it being a non-CDL truck, we're going to get quite that much advantage out of it.
so the agenda,
And we on the chipper truck that I make and hold it together 3 months, but that's going to be $16,000 that I really don't want to spend on a truck that's got 250,000 miles on it.
I agree.
So would you come back Tuesday with another proposal? Would you just
I
alter
can,
this?
yes, sir.
I think that's what we would like to see, so we can see the numbers. And I appreciate that you're going to sell the other truck, and I'd like to see what you can get for it, but it sounds like it's
Yeah.
more than enough to make up.
It'll be more than enough to make up for it. I think 15 will be low for it. Yeah, we absolutely can. It shouldn't be any problem at all. But yeah, I think it would. I think would serve the city's needs better to have three dump trucks that are. I mean, when we have a storm or we have a water main break, first thing we go and grab's a dump truck.
Exactly.
Right now, we have to sometimes call street department guys back in to use one of their trucks. I'd like to keep two of the two better of the used trucks if we can, and give one to the recreation department to keep to use as they need it, because they often need to borrow one. And I'd like to give one to the distribution department to have. Not that these will be on the road all the time, so they won't be terribly expensive to keep, but in emergency situations, they would really come in handy. And we can sell the one and more than make up the deficit.
Any other questions from council? Thank you, Charlie.
All right, thank you.
I see Vicki has a...
Good afternoon, everyone. This is the rezoning request, RA 0117, that was continued from last month. Most recently, this item went to the Planning Commission meeting this past Tuesday. The applicant did submit additional information. Just as a quick reminder, this rezoning request was from rural development to light industrial. Based on the additional information that they submitted, we were able to come to a better understanding of how a portion of the property would actually be, could be rezoned for light industrial. We did have them submit legal descriptions for that particular portion.
Was that, I'm sorry,
I'm sorry.
do you mean residential? You said a portion was gonna remain as light industrial. Isn't that what the big property's going to?
Sure, and if you
Did I
can pull that
misunderstand?
information up.
I understood she said a portion would, only a piece of the property would go to light, would be rezoned to light industrial.
Correct. So
Track
there's a
one.
northern portion, if you will, and there
Ma'am?
should be a site plan.
So
in
is the
packet.
request now to rezone just track 1 as light industrial and leave track 2?
That's the northern
RD?
track.
Yes.
And it would apply to just the northern portion of the track?
They call it track 1 on here.
Yes.
I see, okay, because I thought that, never mind. I'm just gonna be
Yes,
quiet and
there's a
listen to the rest of what you have to say.
There's a map in there listed.
And if I,
So,
That's really in line with what he said he wanted to do at the last meeting.
correct, and therefore, would remain available for residential or could remain undeveloped, thereby you be kind of mitigating any adverse impact that could come where existing homes are. Staff certainly supported that for a couple of reasons with this new layout. Number one, it just based on where the city happens to be, and it's really time that the comprehensive plan be updated. That would be one of the tracks that I certainly would say, based on the properties to the east being light industrial, that it would make good planning sense, if you will, to explore adding that additional property or designating that additional property as light industrial. Right now, if they were to propose at some later point in time to do an industrial subdivision, it would send it back to Planning Commission for consideration. Right now, granted, they're not showing it, but it does give another opportunity, if you will, for what could potentially be proposed when they find out what that is, again, to go back for public review. And so those were really the two main things, and also really being able to mitigate any impacts on the existing residential that exists in that southwestern corner.
I believe basically what this takes.
that's what I understood, so, yeah,
Yes.
I'm on the same page now.
This went back before the...
In favor and support of staff recommendation. So staff recommendation did change based on the modifications to the site plan and the way the uses would be laid out for approval.
Okay, and I believe we have two plans.
This layout makes a whole lot more sense than the other one.
We had a full crew at Planning and Zoning. A lot of discussion about this. There were none of the citizens that had shown up at the previous meeting were there. There was one citizen who spoke against it initially, but he really was confused by the the map and the discussion, and I think it was Larry that went over that with him. It was a 3-2 vote. I was one of the amount concern. As we said, in the original provisions, there was an LU5C that was omitted as one of the policies, and I asked why that was omitted, and she didn't have an answer at that time. So yeah, it was motioned by Larry. There wasn't a slight delay before there was a second. And finally, there was a second, and then it was voted on, and 3-2, it did pass.
Happens up here a lot. We have delays.
Well, maybe, but, just telling you what happened, and so there still is some concern about it. It doesn't meet comprehensive plan, and we have no idea what he would like to break that up into or what he would like to bring in, other than something called light industry.
Thank you, John. Okay, this has been advertised. All right.
Yeah, I'd just like to point out that I see where there can be a concern for the comprehensive plan, and are we going to change that? We're short on industrial property, but just to clarify the part of the property owner, if he purchases this property based on the rezoning, cannot do whatever he wants on that property. It has to fit within the light industrial, and the fact is, we don't really have a say in what people do if they fit within the guidelines. We can't just say, no, you can't do that when it fits in the guidelines. I realize it has to come back to us, but the fact that he doesn't know now what he's going to put on it, I don't think is that big of an issue. It has to fit within light industrial, and it will eventually have to come back, whatever it is.
And we don't change the comprehensive plan very often. How often do we
We're
change
going
it?
to do it next year, right?
You have to do it by next year, by October of 2018. Typically, sometimes it's 5 to 10 years, just depending on if there are major changes in your community that would justify or warrant making a change. So it's really not that often.
So the future zoning map doesn't get changed until you go through that process.
Correct, but to John's point, it's true, we shouldn't just ignore it. There's a
No.
reason you have it, so I don't want
That's
to
your plan at
dismiss
the
it and go,
moment.
well, we don't care what the plan says, this is what we feel like doing, so I didn't want to leave that impression.
Right, and I have expressed my concern about that all along. We have a future land use plan map, and I think to every extent we possibly can, we should be trying to comply with that, as opposed to picking and choosing when we decide that we'll just override it. It either means something or it doesn't. So I still have those objections. Overall, I don't really have an objection to this. I just think that it doesn't meet the future land use map, and I think that's a problem for us to just change that as though it may not mean anything to us. I'm going to think on it some more.
And once we have a community development director on board, hopefully soon, isn't it kind of the plan of planning and zoning that they're gonna start looking at that comprehensive plan again? Because we have to.
You have to. Normally, probably for a community this size, they may take about a year to do it. I would think that it'd be one of the top things on the agenda. You would typically have a draft wrapped up by May of next year, May or June, to send off to the state for review.
Okay, thank you, appreciate that.
Just real quick on that. So it's due by October the 8th, 2018. Does that mean it's due then, or we could start looking at it then? So we're going to look at it much earlier than that.
Right. What it means is you need to be working on it really as soon as possible. You want to have your draft complete and finalized, and as the city council saying, we are in final draft mode and we're transmitting to the state for them to do their final review and approval. You have to have it adopted no later than October 18th. So you need to give yourself ample time for the state to be able to review it and give you comments back, or, during that time frame.
Very good reason to fill that chair. Thank you.
So what if you don't do it?
If you don't do it, then you put yourself in a position where you lose your qualified local government status, and it ultimately would mean that you wouldn't be eligible for funding that may come down from the state or the regional government.
For what funding?
Various types of funding, so it might be transportation-related funding. If you have transportation dollars that come down from the state, you may have, I'm not sure if they do it as it related to like CDBG dollars, but really, it's a state planning requirement.
dollars,
It could
Correct.
go along
VIP
with
dollars.
sales tax money.
Yeah.
I'm just making sure that when it goes in the
Get
paper, everybody
punished.
understands the reasoning why we're having to do this, to make sure that we are able to receive all the funding that we apply for through the state and federal government.
Okay. And before we move
Annexation request 0117, heard concurrently with the rezoning request RA 0217. The application was presented by Green Community Development, represented by Mr. Christopher Hunt. Last month was the just general public hearing and introduction of their request. Also, what was discussed last month, the applicant had a desire to request a continuation. That request, staff certainly agrees with, so the request that you have before, or excuse me, the staff recommendation that is currently before you is deferral or continuation is probably the best choice of words until next month's meeting. As I mentioned, they made a modification and added additional property in their request, and the layout based upon that new site plan has not been submitted yet. What we did direct them to do was at least go out and begin to try to have some conversations with the surrounding property owners so they could get a better understanding of, what they were proposing. We did receive a petition, if you would, at the Planning Commission meeting on Tuesday night with a list of the surrounding property owners who have basically indicated that they don't have any intention of meeting with the applicant on his proposal, if you will, but at this point in time, the applicant has requested the deferral, and staff is certainly recommending approval of that deferral, if you will.
So we'll probably table this Tuesday night.
Yes, sir. I'll make a motion to defer it till June or whatever.
How long of deferral is he asking for?
He's only asking until the next meeting, so that would be
1
June.
month, okay.
Correct.
We've been talking
ties in with what Jeff said too, that I would want to know is, if it doesn't work, because looks to me it's communally owned,
Correct.
so if I have a septic system and it messes up, I take care of it. You've now got one that's owned by a bunch of people,
By the homeowners
And-
association.
big houses on very small lots. Who pays for that when it's communally owned? How do you get the money? I mean, so aside from will it fail, or when it has any issues, how do they pay for it? So that's,
I'm going to
Yeah.
at least answer that question right now.
okay.
Anytime you have communal space, if you will, in a subdivision, that's one of the reasons why the requirement is to create a homeowners association to be able to address and maintain those areas. Now, are there challenges sometimes where we do have subdivisions where, homeowners associations, maybe they didn't get fully created, or, do they have some challenge enough just maintaining some of the simple things like their detention ponds? Absolutely. So those are things that certainly we will take into consideration before making a recommendation on adding another level of responsibility, if you will. But to answer your question short, the homeowners association would be responsible for any communal space in a subdivision.
And that's assuming they have enough money there. I mean, like when a gated community, the city can't be responsible for the roads. So that's what happened in Fairfield when the flood came and all those roads got messed up. They were totally responsible for them. Well, you think there's enough money in that homeowner's money to take care of that? No. So they worked out some sort of deal with the county.
Theoretically, they're agreeing to assess themselves to pay for whatever's needed. That's in theory. In practice, you're right, many people are not going to be, if you get an assessment saying you need to pay $10,000 to help rebuild the septic system, practically speaking, that's difficult for people to do.
And then if it becomes a public health issue, does the city get held holding? That would tie into what Jeff
Yes.
said, though.
I'd like to add something to that's food for thought. More than likely, this type of system would have to be approved by EPD. One of the requirements that they would probably put on this is the fact that they may want to have some kind of trust indenture entered into. Okay, who is that person or that entity going to be? They prefer, of course, a municipality to be the backup, but it could be a third party. Okay, so if it didn't operate properly, or say the HOA, they went bankrupt and went belly up, then who's going to be responsible for that? And so those are some considerations I think you really have to think through.
And Pete, since you're up here,
I haven't either. I can't speak to exactly, especially with the modification that you talked about, because I wouldn't be surprised if some of those field locations have changed probably. But there are some common space areas where you do see a drain field in. Now, golf courses and other applications, where you have use, that is acceptable. But it has a lot to do with how well it's engineered, the footprint, percolation rate. These things are supposed to be designed into this. One other concern that I had in the literature that I looked at too is it appears that they are selling this to the developer or whoever, HOA, as a build, design, operate. And because of the advanced treatment that is involved with this type of process, the state's going to require a certain level of certification of an operator to man this system. And, in the literature, they claim that they come in and they monitor it and they do this and that. And I know sometimes with all the bells and whistles with SCADA and things like that, they can observe this remotely, but I'm not so sure that the state's going to allow them to leave it unattended for any period of time. So that could be a real issue there. As far as if it's there, you've got another party that's operating it that may be outside of the homeowners association.
And if history's any
I did talk with the county. Of course, the county is responsible for approving septic systems. I think they've had some issues with centralized systems like this where they don't approve them, they don't review them. And with the downturn in the economy, they got bit because who was responsible for it? And then if I went to the bank doesn't know, what to do with something like this either. So it just becomes a real problem.
Do you know of any of them in the area that are operating like this one?
There's one,
I heard there was one in Hiram.
no, there's one actually, I think in what is the unincorporated portion, just outside of the city of Villa Rica. Is it
Yes.
Indian?
Yes.
Yeah, I don't know if the subdivision may be called Indian Lakes or Indian.
Indian Lakes, somewhere better
Yeah,
road.
a septic communal.
And they did have two that were, I think, identified in their literature. I think that Georgia Tech Golf Course or Golf Club, they have one incorporated there that's operating, and they had another one in a shopping center. I don't remember off the top of my head, but it serves a kind of a small strip mall shopping center kind of operation there rather than residential. I think it's always good too to do field visits if we can find a location like that, or if there's something operating successfully, I think it's worth taking a look at. But I think we need to, it would be prudent of us to make sure that we're looking at all the issues. And
Absolutely.
the positives and the negatives might be on this.
As to issue number one,
Any notice in writing where the county took action, that it appeared on their agenda. I do know that they certainly received it. One of the district commissioners attended the meeting and certainly provided comments, but I don't have anything that actually showed where the governing body took action.
okay. Further questions?
What would the county have to do? Release?
The county wouldn't have, we received anything back from Carroll County.
Obligation to object to it if they object to it. If they say nothing, then
Correct.
that's not an objection.
Okay, thank you, Vicki. Tab C, Human Resources, Stephanie?
What
I
about
think there was another
What about-
item.
item 4? A4,
Oh, traffic calming device.
whatever that might be.
So the Community Development Department received a request from representatives of the Mirror Lake. Yeah. All right, thank you. We're going to tag team this a bit here, but the Community Development Department received a petition from property owners along Golfers Way for traffic calming devices to be installed. Essentially, there are requirements that a traffic study be done, and that traffic study look at, it puts measures in place for what would be excessive speeding. The police department actually went out in February, I believe it was, and conducted a study within and along this particular street. What we have essentially was they didn't necessarily meet the warrants based upon what the requirements of the ordinance happen to be, based on the information that the police department collected. So I'll have Captain Parker maybe go over a little bit more of what the findings of the study happen to be, and just also give you an opportunity to have some discussion and provide direction, if you will, but we certainly wanted to make you aware of what the findings of that traffic study happen to be.
As you can see, we started the speed study at a posted speed limit of 30 miles per hour. That was done because Golfers Way is not marked, and by state law, if a road isn't marked, we have to assume it's 30 miles an hour. And I think most roads in Mare Lake are 24, if I'm not mistaken. The enforcement rating at 30 miles an hour gives us a 0% enforcement rating. We have to allow, again, by state law, we have to allow 10 miles an hour over the posted speed limit. That gives an enforcement rating of 40. And if you look at that, we had one car over 40 miles an hour during a 2-week period. We generally do these in a 7-day period. We did this one for a 2-week period. But if you drop back down to the 24, we had about 1,500 cars in a 2-week period over 24 miles an hour. So the enforcement rating is very low for speed, although it's not a road we can't enforce speed on that road, but we can increase our presence and things like that. That being said, the police department has no opinion one way or another. If y'all want to put a speed hump there, we're not going to contest anything at all. So.
Well, I'm familiar with this traffic study. We talked about this extensively last Thursday. I knew that staff was working on this, and I understand what the law is. Chief talked a little bit about it last week, and it's not just a matter of signs. So I wanted to make sure that was clear as well, because I got another email about that today. But something needs to be done to calm that traffic on Golfers Way. Even by looking at these numbers, you know there's a significant amount of traffic over there that's going a little too fast. So I want to look at what we can do to calm that traffic over there.
Yeah, what I found is, I imagine this is the same criteria and ordinance I was looking at 2 or 3 years ago, and my big problem with it wasn't what y'all have to do what the law says. They have to be 10 miles per hour over. But where I walk down some of these roads, and I've had complaints from North Avenue and some other areas, well, actually, all over the city, we've had complaints of speeding. So even if it's not enforceable, doesn't mean it's not a safety issue. Because when it's 30 and they're going 40, believe it or not, 10 miles per hour is pretty fast down a street like mine.
Very fast.
Or some of the other streets we're on. It's a significant difference if they're 10 or 15 over when it's a 30 mile per hour, or 25 in some places. That's significant. However, I don't know, I'm looking at this, it doesn't look like hardly any cars, though. This is the combined total. I'm looking at this sheet. That doesn't look real high for that 36 to 40 mile per hour when I'm looking at the numbers of cars. That's telling me the numbers of cars, right?
Yes, ma'am.
That are going the 36 to 40.
Yes, ma'am.
31 to 35, there's a good bunch in there. Well, the ones that are 26 to 30, they're within, that's 1,200 cars, but they're within the speed limit. So none of those count at all. It's not a vast number, because there's only, out of 2 weeks, 19 cars 36 to 40 miles per hour. Now that's a little fast for those little streets,
Well,
but
on
I need to
Golfers
go over
Way,
there and
though,
look at it too. I need to go
Golfers
over
Way
and
has
drive
no
it.
sidewalks, and when folks are out walking on those streets, believe me, 25 miles an hour is pretty fast.
That's why I'm going to go over there and just look at it. I think if I see it, I'll get a visual on it, but this is a problem all over the city.
The initial complaining on this, and I completely understand his stance on it. And when we showed him the numbers, he wasn't very happy with us, but the data is what the data is. But I completely understand his stance, what he was saying, what he was talking about, the kids' ball. His kids were playing in the street, and somebody came by at a high rate of speed. I understand that his concern.
That particular stretch, too, allows you to pick up a good bit of speed. So I think, at the very least, if we don't have, a presence is one thing, and if we don't have an enforcement option, speed humps or something along those lines to slow that traffic down is what needs to happen over
And I
there.
will tell you,
before
we've
somebody
gotten
gets hit.
several, we're having to put the speed studies, the counter out in several subdivisions. We're getting a lot of, the complaints pick up in the summertime for some reason, but we're putting that out on several roads right now, and they're going to be the third study in Mirror Lake alone. We're getting complaints about this.
It'd be nice if everybody was a good citizen. I mean, I know when I go around bikers, when I see people out playing, everything else, I mean, I try to be super careful because I brake for squirrels. So, I mean, right? So I'm thinking, I think about somebody's child running out, but I'm amazed when I'm even walking down some of these streets at the way, and I'll either yell at them or at least give them a visual, you know, can you slow that down? It's a little scary.
Work.
They wave at you like
You
they wave
have
at
what you can put out there?
We didn't want to make the police, they didn't necessarily want to make a recommendation. Like I said, it didn't meet the warrants. However, what we are providing you with the information, the thought from 2 to 3 speeding humps, and just being consistent with the other speed humps that are there. The price, I believe it was $16,500 to $18,000.
That cost for 3? Is it for 4? Is it for 1?
I gave you it's 2. At, $6,000 per hump. If you do 3 of them, it's $18,000, but at $5,500 for 3 of them, it'd be the $16,500. And I believe Public Works said that's about what they paid last time per hump, and for some of the other communities that in Mirror Lake that have the speed humps.
There are different classes.
The similar one
Shoreline.
on Shoreline, similar to what's on Shoreline.
Okay.
And certainly, I believe, it said $5,500 to $6,000 is what the estimate that Public Works indicated.
What are those ones, Ron, that are, we've got one in Chadwick Place. I wasn't a part of getting that in, but it's almost like a little portable, removable. It's not permanent asphalt or concrete.
Let me ask
Those are
Sorry.
that's
Just
speed
saying the speed
breakers.
tables are 5,500?
I mean, they're real obnoxious, but they slow you down.
Pete, can you step?
Because this is going to come up, because I get these complaints around the city on a regular basis, just various locations.
On the speed hump, the price that I was quoted from our staff was $5,500 to $6,000.
What about
Now,
speed
you
bumps?
Well,
Which,
we could get into bumps or humps, but
Well,
or a hump or a bump.
a pincher.
I think
On what it required the people in the community to do, they might as well have a full-time job trying to jump through the hoops of getting a speed hump in their neighborhood.
so what?
Seriously, it was
And I think I
demanding.
might have-
And then they had to pay for it themselves.
Well, that's what
So it really just defers to the traffic study, if you will, and the quartile of speeding.
I think if you go back and look, the council set up specific things that any individual or any subdivision that wanted any kind of traffic calming device that they had to go through to get these things because of the amount of money that it was going to cost. At that one time, it seemed as though there were 15 or 18 that were brought to council. And at that point in time, council put in writing somewhere that all the things they had to go through to get that. And I believe you're right. Part of that was cost. And, you know, if you're going to do that, then fine. Then I want a red light at Rocky Branch Road.
Working on it.
I mean,
Let's
you know,
move on.
I don't know if it's different from this particular ordinance that I have, but it really just, based upon, we just essentially followed this. It asks for the petition first, and then it talks about the speed limit criteria. If there is anything else beyond that, then I'm not aware. I just essentially followed this. But, like I said, they didn't meet the warrants based upon the ordinance that we have here. So at least, that's part of why we at least wanted to bring it to your attention. So they don't meet the warrants, but we know that there was still a considerable amount of conversation. And certainly with our conversation with the police, it was at least, let's have the conversation. Again, this range that we have for the 3 humps, it's not budgeted, but we wanted to, again, let you kind of give us a little bit more direction. If there was anything else that you wanted us to look at beyond what's in this ordinance.
Well, I think the direction.
For sure, the public has a right to know what that criteria is, and I want to know what it is.
Sure.
And we're sitting here today talking about something, and I don't even know what the criteria is. Apparently, it doesn't match with what you're talking about. I'm sorry, David.
I'll look, and that very well may be the latest version, but I'll double check that between now and next Tuesday.
And this is dated, just so that everybody understands, July 5th of 2016. So I don't know how far back before then you may have had the discussion, but.
There were. There was disagreement on, which was which. Right,
said several times that this didn't meet the warrants, but I don't have any information about that criteria in my packet.
This should be, this was in the complete packet, I don't know. We sent over the traffic study, the information, and the petition. Yeah, she's scrolling through it.
I have that. I have all
Keep
that.
going. Where they at?
Where's,
I don't see the warrants. What is the criteria? I'm looking for the criteria. I
In
have all
other
of that.
words, what the city requires?
Yes.
based upon the
I think-
ordinance, it
I think
is-
that would be
What did it
I
not
think
meet?
that would be the ordinance,
That's the ordinance.
And what?
but I haven't seen it, and I forgot,
isn't in
it's
here.
been a while. Into it, but ultimately, it was gonna be the council's decision where these went and didn't go.
And that makes sense to me.
I need to look at it.
I'm just, as I'm thinking about this, and I don't have to continue very much longer, but you're talking about some 3,000 cars that exceeded what they thought would be the safe posted speed limit out there. Communities don't put up a speed limit including a tolerance that the police might have to follow. So I was just wondering what the criteria was, and I'll get it. That's okay.
Here you go.
Matt, you can get it to me after. Thank you.
We'll get copies for everybody.
Thank you,
fine.
Deb. That's enough.
Didn't we talk about one time about?
Any other questions?
Remember beating this horn.
One question I would ask,
If we okayed the
we just
engineering.
gonna concentrate on Golfers Way, or we gonna talk about the other streets too that have needed this before they did?
No, I
We
think
have a
that, I think that's
We can't
why.
just leave, all of them and just.
It's just
just get one that's
How many
gonna be
petitions
like
do you
we
have?
to,
We just have this one petition.
Yeah, I would.
So I haven't
I think
received
that's why
any
we're
other
spending this
requests.
much time on is we know Golfers Way is not the only one. They're the only one that bothered to get a petition together.
Correct.
But this is an issue around the city. It will not just be Golfers Way. I've had people ask for stuff and.
We do explain, every time when we do these, we do explain what the process is to everyone. So that if they want to go through this process, they know how.
Yeah, because y'all have been, we get these pretty regularly. You're getting requested to put them out. Yeah.
We do explain it to everyone, and some folks follow through and some folks don't.
Okay.
But I just want to state for the record, okay.
Good afternoon. What you have in front of you now is a proposed amendment to the retirement plan. What this will allow is for a former employee who is actually elected, leaves, and he becomes an elected official, he or she. This will allow them to draw retirement on their employee funds while they are in service to the city of Villa Rica. And, you are all entitled to the same retirement plan. So this would allow a person to actually draw his retirement while he is serving on the council or some other elected official. And that has no financial impact to us. That, in a nutshell, that's it.
Was there any reason for it to be the other way? It just happened to be that way.
The original plan document said no in-service distributions. This will change that with specifics as to the elected official positions, but not.
Yeah, they're not working as an employee anymore.
Right.
And I just want to state for the record, since this doesn't apply.
This request was made beginning of the year, I believe, and GMEBS takes a while to get the ordinances written and vetted by their attorneys, and they have sent it to us for execution.
I think this is pretty much common sense, and this, from what I know about it, it seems like an
Is there any disadvantage?
easy thing for us to move on.
There's no disadvantage, and the only reason it had never been considered is we've never ever had an elected official who was formerly an employee.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. There's no reason to penalize someone who worked for the city but then got elected to a
Right,
position.
and one thing is they must be vested and of normal retirement age, which is 55.
Okay, we can,
And the only other thing I would mention, it might make Elisa's life a little easier, is probably the only thing we needed on this was the page that showed the change. Probably not the whole packet, because I know you have to put all this stuff together. You know what I'm saying? And do we?
Except for the fact that the call it GMEBS, I don't, that's an acronym for something, but GMEBS makes us approve the whole, to approve the whole changed plan every time we make a change in it, so you have to get the whole thing.
Unlike an ordinance where you're going in and tweaking something like, or with the charter, for instance.
They send us this plan, it supersedes anything else, so
Okay.
that's why you have to have the whole thing.
Okay, All right, thank you.
We had to kill a bunch of trees.
I know, I just kept thinking, man, that's a lot of trees.
So do you have any questions?
Simple enough, thank you.
Thank you, Stephanie. Tab D.
Good afternoon.
Afternoon.
This is your first quarter monthly financial update. This is 3 months into the year, 25% for those of you who like percentages. We'll start with the general fund. The cash there at the end of March was $7.5 million. And the unassigned fund balance is $6.3 million. That will be updated very soon. The auditors are here this week. And once we have the final numbers for 16, I'll be able to give you the latest unassigned fund balance, which is the reserve. Next is the major revenue statuses in that fund, which are mostly taxes. The first one is our local option sales tax. Our budget is $2.4 million. So far, we've received $360,000. We have to book January back to the prior year because that's what it's attributable to. So that's why that seems lower than you might expect for 3 months. Property tax, our budget is $3.1 million. At this point, we received $47. We have received more in 2017, but it gets booked back to the proper year. Occupational tax, this is our business license and things. We've received 63% of that budget there at $250,000, slightly less than last year. May just be a timing issue. And then I've added a new one here, which we reorganized how we are posting things, which account things are being posted to from the community development side. So I don't necessarily have the same to compare to in the prior year, but going forward, it might be a good indicator of how our community is doing with new inspections and things, permits. So our budget so far is just under $100,000, and we've already received $209,000 this year. So.
Sarah, just on the $7.5 million, is that earning interest for us? I mean, is that going up?
It is earning interest, yes.
Thank you.
That is not the full amount in the bank account. If we scroll down to the water sewer fund, they have a negative $864,000, so that reduces that $7.5 million because it's a pool. So the amount in the bank is less than that $7.5 million, but still, it's a good amount. The investments in that account, just over $2 million, that's in a CD. Our outstanding bond principal at this point is $33.3 million. And our unrestricted reserve in that fund is $1.4 million, which the last time we analyzed it was right about a 3-month reserve. So when you think about your own personal savings, if you have 3 months of your expenses set aside, that's about what we have in that fund. Major sales in that fund, obviously water and sewer, and I've included tap fees here. In the water sales, we have received 17% of the budget, and in the sewer sales, we've received 18% of the budget. Combined, it's just shy of $1 million. Those are slightly less than last year. And in our tap fees so far, we have received $71,000. So that's 63% higher than last year. And overall, that fund, our budget is $7.1 million for revenue and expense. You can see there, our revenue so far, we've received 15%, and our expenditures, we've exceeded 21%, both of which that are higher than last year. Go on to the sewer fund, or the sanitation fund. Oh, we can look at the chart there. It's a little bit hard to see in this copy, but the yellow line, the first 3 months you see, that's this year, and we are following on trend, actually slightly higher than the previous years. Okay, go on down to the next one, sanitation, solid waste.
Let me ask a question, Pete. You may be able to.
Flooding conditions recently, we did kind of knock the plan out for a few days there.
Because that directly impacts the line.
Yes. All right, next is solid waste and sanitation. Our cash there is a negative $300,000, $310,000, so that reduces, again, that pooled balance there, not in the bank, but just overall pool. The reserve there is negative. At the end of 16, it was, at the end of 2015, it was a negative $113,000, so basically it owes the other funds, keeping it going. Again, I'll update you after the 16 audit is complete. Major revenue status there is what we charge our customers for the solid waste. Our budget is $863,000. So far, we've brought in $163,000, which is 3% less than last year. Overall, that budget, the revenue is slightly less than last year, and our expense is 25% higher than the prior year. And I think, I went back and looked at this, and I think both the water sewer fund and the solid waste funds transfer money to the general fund to pay for the shared expenses. We talked about this during the budget. So they help pay for the finance department, HR, your IT, legal, some of those things that a standalone utility would have. So depending on when those transfers were done, that might show that the expense is higher this year, because I have made those transfers than last year. Okay, any questions?
I don't know
on
if
that?
you're the one to ask, but how the building permits doing? Are they on the increase?
That is included in that number. You can see, go up to the general fund. Keep going. Permits and inspections, we've already doubled what we've budgeted in just 3 months, so.
So they're increasing.
Yes.
Good.
And that was the one area I wanted to clarify what you said, or have you clarify it for me. You were saying you've broken that down somehow differently so we can see that better, what we're talking about, the growth.
We've changed it, how it was being accounted for, maybe using different accounts than the prior year. So I don't necessarily have a true exact comparison, because things may have been posted in different accounts. But we visited with Vicki and Rhonda when the budget season started. I wanted to make sure that we were budgeting for it properly, and so they recommended that we actually change the account names and kind of restructure where we're posting things.
And
so I
then-
just don't have a one-to-one comparison.
But this will allow us to see the growth in that area better because of the way it's broken down. Okay, and the other question I had to do with solid waste, because I know we're going to be dealing with the rate study for water, sewer, that sort of thing, but we're still in trouble in solid waste.
And we
What's our
included
plan?
that in the rate study, so they will be looking into that as
Okay,
well.
oh, great, okay.
It's included in these things.
Any other questions?
Okay, item 2.
This is our annual agreement to have liability insurance, liability and property insurance. It starts May 1st and goes through next May. Historically, we've used GIRMA, which is Georgia Interlocal Risk Management Agency. I looked back as far as Cassell will go, and it seems like we've always used them. We went out to bid last year, but still ended up going with GIRMA again, so this year we applied for them as well. I compared, I don't know if you looked over the terms, I compared what the terms were last year to what they are this year. There was some things that had been removed. On this year's terms, they say NA, so I reached out to our contact at the insurance company, and she said that was an omission, and they'd be sending us a new copy of the terms, which should be exactly the way it was in the prior years. And I included that email on the back of this packet, but.
So that was a mistake on their part to put non-applicable.
Correct.
Okay.
And for those
The driver safety training, I believe, something else? The sexual harassment training, and I attended a class on contracts, so they do provide other trainings as well.
Any questions? Item 3.
Okay, this is the utility rate study. After the council approved this.
3 proposals.
That's only half of them, too.
That's the narrowed down 3.
Yes.
Narrowed down from 6.
We issued a request for proposals on March 16th, and I've itemized some of the things that the scope that we listed on the RFP, basically determining the rates that will generate sufficient revenue for our cash flow, our reserves, those things, trying to get those funds to be self-sufficient. Also, assess the equity and methodology of the different rates. So why do we charge residential this way? Why do we charge commercial this way? Is it fair? You know, it may not be the same dollar rates, but is it equitable? Evaluating the needs for future capital, and they'll work with us on that, and they will expect input from us on that, but we want them to look to compare, do a benefit analysis of, are we going to continue to treat our water? We've talked about going to a purchase only, you know, comparing the difference in that. And lastly, determining the revenue requirements, I've already mentioned this, to provide adequate reserves. Those proposals were due back April 18th. We received 6 of them, and if you go to the next page just explains how we evaluated them based on their company, their experience, whether they understood our project scope and their schedule, and then their technical approach to the study. We have narrowed it down to 6 to 3 firms. Pete, the Public Works Director, and myself went through the 6 proposals, looking at the staff that they have proposed to use, looking at their previous experience, looking at the type of process they will go through to do this analysis, and we came up with this, we kind of did a matrix on grading them after speaking to one another. Do you want to pull that? Do you have that? So we graded them based on, you know, where they were located, where their team would be located. We looked at their experience, how long has the firm been there, how long have the employees at their team, the team that'll be set aside for us, how long have they been doing this? Are they engineers or CPAs? Do they have professional experience like that? Do they have sub-consultants that they're going to use? We did have one firm that said they did consult, or they had sub-consultants that would actually be doing part of the work. And then we looked at their experience. Did they have water, wastewater, and sanitation experience? The first people we talked to did not have solid waste or sanitation experience. So we looked at that, looked at whether they had some Georgia references, and looked at, did they understand the scope, you know, just straight off, can they repeat back to us what we want them to do? For the most part, yes. We had some that didn't include, for instance, the comparison of the treatment of water versus the purchase of water. Well, if they weren't repeating that to us, I didn't know how important it would be in their study. So we looked at that. We looked at the schedule. They all proposed to complete on time. Some of them gave us actual hours, and it varied from 190 hours to 355 hours. So that was a bigger gap than I expected. And lastly, we looked at their technical approach as far as determining revenue requirements. Are they going to use an Excel model? Will we get to keep that model after the fact? Were they going to be looking at the AWWA standards? There was one that listed if we wanted to do some more digging on solid waste, that would be optional. Well, that means another price tag. So counted them off a little bit for that. So after all that, we narrowed it down to Burns and McDonnell, which is, they do have some engineers, or they are an engineering firm, I believe. Next is the Public Resources Management Group out of Florida. And then lastly is, I gotta follow my numbers here, Rath Tellis, I believe that's how you say it, Financial Consultants. They're in Charlotte. So I explained to the mayor a minute ago, we requested technical proposals and cost proposals to be separate. So we read through the technical proposals so that we wouldn't necessarily be swayed by the cost. We wanted to know who could do the job for us that we wanted to be done. So I gave the mayor, before we started, the sealed cost proposals. We can look at those. You've heard our recommendations from the technical side, and I'm interested to see how the prices line out.
Well, first of all,
session itself, did we advertise as to when the bids would be opened? I mean,
we opened the technical proposals at the scheduled time.
okay.
that's what I was thinking the same thing.
We didn't tell the bidders when we were going to open them.
Not the cost proposals.
Proposals. I think we ought to probably at least take a look. I'm not sure as to whether or not we ought to notify them as to when the bids would be open, so if they want to have somebody sitting there while they're open, they could.
I certainly think
That sounds good. And we'll set the date.
They're probably not going to want to send somebody to watch it, but I don't know of any reason why we can't do it sitting here on TV and do it, so they can.
Can we do it Tuesday? Is that too soon?
I don't think so, if we can call and just tell them when we're gonna do it.
Okay, we'll handle that.
Well, it seems like if we're gonna be able to vote on this, we ought to know the cost of it. Otherwise,
Absolutely.
We can't
Yeah,
vote on it
we'll-
Tuesday. if we don't
otherwise-
know.
We need
otherwise we'll
some,
let- of one, not three.
so we would not be able to vote on it if we open it Tuesday until we got,
We could vote on it.
well, not unless we get a chance to look at it.
They could be open on, I mean, you could call them and tell them you're gonna publicly open them on Monday, right?
Right. I think we can.
And then we could get a summary of,
Correct.
No, we can think about it.
Okay, so we'll do that. We'll let them.
Appreciate that, 'cause I really want to get this
I'd like to see
rate
the-
study underway.
I don't want to sit here and think about it during the council meeting.
I understand, sir.
I don't think it's
All right.
Okay. Item 4.
This, I'm bringing before you the 2016 year-end budget amendments. We gave the auditors the 2016 financials, as they were finished as best as I could, on Monday morning. And after the fact, was able to look and see where we may have some areas that need some budget amendments. The state requires that all governmental funds, that the departments cannot be over budget. So this is based on my final numbers. The auditors were happy with everything they've received, so I'm hoping they don't have any large unexpected adjustments. So these are based on the numbers that were given to them. The first one is the Narcotic Enforcement Fund. We did have purchase of equipment for new vehicles. That was $15,800. And so if you look at the next page, we're basically using fund balance for that. And that's because those seizure funds and narcotic funds, they build up over time. You may not use those seized funds in that same year. You may use it in the future year. So that's what I refer to when I say we're using fund balance. That's you're using prior year seized money that's built up in that account. So we just need a budget amendment to approve that increase to the equipment purchase line. Okay. Next, this is for the UDAG fund. As you remember, the council approved to forgive the loan that was in between that and the general fund. That was for the Avante purchase years ago. And what was left in that fund was about $550,000. So we moved it to the general fund and we set aside $500,000 of it for the revolving loans, $250,000 to the DDA and $250,000 to the Development Authority. So that's basically just getting rid of the UDAG fund, since it's not, that's not the purpose of that money anymore. So I just need a budget amendment to, since I have a transfer, it shows up as an expense, so I just need a budget amendment for that expense. Okay. Hotel motel fund, we had increased revenues for 2016. So I need to increase the budget for that, and obviously, I'm not as, the budget amendment isn't as necessary for that as much as it is for the offset expense, where we transfer 60-40%, 40% going to the CVB, Convention Visitors Bureau, and 60% going back to the general fund. So the offset is obviously the increase to revenue. The big one in that, the other large one in that fund, in the beginning, I think it was early last year, when I was probably getting ready for the audit, I realized that there was fund balance that had built up in that fund. It looks like it was money not transferred to the general fund over, I didn't go back and look how many years, but that had built up in that fund of $72,000. I let the city manager know, and And then the council approved the project for the gateway signs in the city. So we used that money because we didn't have to take out of the budget. We had money in this fund balance that we were able to use. So that, we wrote a check to the DDA for that, used for the gateway signage project. So I need, since that fund balance is a transfer, I have to do a budget amendment to count it as an expense in the year. But it basically used up what was left of that fund balance, because that fund should clear out every year. The money that comes in should be transferred out, whether it's to the CVB or to the general fund.
To the general, but it hadn't.
It hadn't.
Okay.
And, we had the time when we didn't have we had time between the tourism board and the CVB, and that may have been when it built up, the majority of it probably. But that money was available to be used, so we used it for the gateway signs there. Okay. This is the Public Facilities Authority. We have bond trustee fees that we have to pay every year to BB&T. They hold the escrow accounts for our bonds. So I need a budget amendment for that, $7,400. The amount that we transferred into that fund from the water sewer funds was high enough to cover those, so the offset is to increase revenue for those transfers in. Next is SPLOST. This is kind of just housekeeping. We need to, I asked the auditor if this was necessary, but since the SPLOST, we may post things from the police department or the public works department, library, different things. He said those would count as departments in the way the state requires that no department should go over budget in a governmental fund, and SPLOST is considered a governmental fund. So this is kind of just cleanup. But basically, some of them needed to be, some of them I need to increase the budget. Like council approved to purchase a police vehicle at the end of the year with SPLOST funds that were left over from another project. So I need to increase that budget for $26,000. Fence at the mill and the Villa Rica Elementary Gym, those were actually projects, I believe, that were started in 15, but they were posted at the beginning of 16. So those were used with SPLOST dollars that had been set aside, but it wasn't necessarily set up in the 16 budget, if that makes sense. So the project just rolled into the next year. So I need to...
You have another fence at the mill.
There you go. I was thinking the same thing.
Are you saying that
didn't get finished till the beginning of 16.
How did it get finished? What fence would we be talking
That's
about?
the temporary fencing I'm pretty sure we're talking about.
Is that rental?
No, it's
we owned by the city.
Okay, so it was the expense to buy that fence, that type of fencing.
Correct.
I
I shouldn't say completed. It was, I guess we paid for it in 16.
On these items, these last
I forgot that we.
4 or 5 items that are in parentheses, those are negatives.
Yes, those
That's
were,
negative expenditures.
I'm sorry?
Those are expenditures in the negative category.
That means it didn't have an expenditure in that. We set up, the 16 budget set up expenses for those departments, for those special projects, but when it's a water sewer project, we don't actually account for the expense in the SPLOST fund. We actually transfer money to the water sewer fund. So I didn't really need those departments to have a budget in the SPLOST. I really just needed the transfer to be budgeted. So there is a transfer, the $259,000, that is the transfer, and then I reduced the departments that had been allocated for those projects. So that's why you see the difference there. I increased the transfer line, but I decreased the actual individual projects because they were accounted for in the water sewer fund.
Okay.
So with all of those, you see down at the bottom, use of prior year SPLOST. I could have said use of fund balance, but it's just use of the SPLOST revenue that had been built up over the years of $213,000.
questions?
2015 SPLOST is the next fund that needs to be amended for $2,200. The library expense that we had in that was just slightly over that we had budgeted by $2,200. So I need to use, again, prior year SPLOST for that. Next is the capital projects fund. We do not book the general fund projects in the general fund. Just the way governmental accounting is, you have to book those separately. So they're in their own capital projects fund. And the expense, the library hit several different funds, several different accounts. The expense was $60,000 higher than what was originally budgeted. So that money was transferred from the general fund. That's where that is coming from. So I need to increase those two line items.
You know what that was?
You beat me to it.
No.
Can you find out what
Yes.
that was?
Yeah, I
It
think,
wouldn't have been any individual item. Those, in that fund, we paid the large amounts to the contractors. Those checks were $350,000, $200,000. So it's just the difference of what was budgeted versus what was actually paid out. But I can find the details of what was paid from that fund.
Thank you.
And I think I want to kind of, I thought he was going to ask this question, and I think he was headed in that direction, but do we have
Landscape's done,
I may have to defer on that.
drainage is done.
The final sod installation has not happened. We planted ryegrass and it's still pretty good, so we'll install the final sod installation once we pull the rye up, which we're expecting to be next month. And so whatever may be remaining, there may be, I can tell you that there's some other plants that have died that we'll go ahead and replace those. That's the major stuff that's left to be done. And what it doesn't have, also, we're going to move forward with a dumpster installation. There's no outside dumpster there, so that's really it.
we on a pay-as-you-go basis, they finish the work and then we pay them. So the sod and all gets put down and then we pay for it. Is that the way it works?
Well, we'll have a PO, so squared away with the purchase of the sod. So, but the money's still there and it's available, if that's answering your question.
It does, but here's my request, okay? I want to know how much money we spent for that library, not including any donations. I want to know what the total cost of that library is, and that's been a hard. You know, I think we owe it to tell.
We will get that. And let me correct myself. The 321 fund, which is the 2015 SPLOST, that's where we made our big contractor payments. The one that we were just speaking about, the capital projects fund, I believe that was the landscaping. So that was what was being done at the end of the year. We had set aside $100,000, but only $60,000 had been spent at that point.
Yeah, but that was also a contribution, if you will.
From Tanner?
Yes. And so that's where I was able to transfer the money from the general fund, because that's, we had taken in the receipt, yes, from that purchase, or that payment. Okay. Moving on to the water sewer fund. This is two major things. First, I wanted to increase our budget for the water purchases by $150,000. We are actually over than that, but that's what I need to balance that department. I think we were close to $1 million of water purchases in 2016. So I need to increase that line item by $150,000 to cover that, to make that department whole. Next, this says $700,000 for depreciation for the wastewater treatment plant. When the wastewater treatment plant first came on board, it was booked into the general fund, but that is a water sewer asset, and it needs to be included in the water sewer fund. So it wasn't until the auditors looked at it, it wasn't until I got my recommendations last summer that we realized that that was the case. So they restated our financials. The previous, I don't know if y'all remember this, but they restated the previous year's statements, and they did the 15-year statements for moving that asset. It's a $34 million change to our assets. So the 2016 budget did not include the depreciation for the wastewater treatment plant, which is close to $700,000.
Okay, I'm just an old fat football.
Right. So I do not have to pay anyone for that, but it does affect our bottom line. Basically, depreciation takes, instead of counting an expense in the first year that you buy it, you know that that asset is going to last. I think in this case, it's probably over 40 years. We know that we're going to have it for a long time. So this depreciation allows you to spread the cost over that 40 years, however long you expect to have it. So that's why, I mean, $700,000, that's a lot of money, or it's a high number. It's not cash money, but that's $34 million spread over the life of the asset.
So we're amortizing basically the cost.
Yes, we don't have to take the hit right in that first year.
But you do say we're taking $600,000 out of the fund balance.
Yes, so it's not a cash transaction, but it does hit our bottom line. So when I was getting ready for the auditors last week, and I started posting depreciation, I had been posting it throughout the year to kind of make sure our financials, that we were looking at accurate numbers, but it wasn't until I actually sat down and did the fixed asset analysis, I realized where that asset, where they had recommended that was supposed to be, and that hadn't been taken into account for our 2016 budget. Thankfully, it is in our 2017 budget, so I won't be coming back to you with that this year. So yes, so between those two items, I'm asking for a budget amendment of $850,000. Thankfully, $250,000 of it, I'm able to increase revenue for the transfer from those SPLOST projects. So it's not all going to hit the bottom line, but that $600,000 there, either the natural course would be to take it from fund balance and water sewer fund. But like we saw, we barely have a 3-month reserve for that water sewer fund, hence the definite need of the rate study. So my recommendation in this case would be to transfer from the general fund balance. That's much healthier. If we were going to have bondholders come look at us in the next few years and our reserve has depleted so far, that could affect our bond rating. So I don't think we necessarily want to deplete our reserve that fast in 1 year. I did discover this morning, I sent a entry to the auditors for a change that needed to be made. There were some items in our repairs and maintenance that truly were capital in nature, and they actually added up to $200,000. We've had a lot of work done on the two plants that we have, the water treatment plant and the wastewater treatment plant. So those don't need to be, same thing, those don't need to be counted as an expense in this first year. We can capitalize it over the life of those assets. We did valve replacements, pump upgrades, and those types of things. So I was actually able to send them an entry today for $200,000. So it makes the loss not $600,000, but we're still at a loss in that fund of about $450,000. So,
a question for you. Of the $150,000 for the purchase of water from Carroll County Water Authority, how much money did we make?
What money did we make? The revenue budget is between.
I guess I'm. Like you said, an old fat football coach. If we bought water for $150,000 from Carroll County and we sold it to our constituents, there has to be an amount of money we made over that $150,000.
Well, the problem is we still have the plant and still have the depreciation of the lines. We have, did I say personnel?
No, what I'm saying, there was water purchases to Carroll County Water Authority for $150,000.
Right.
And we ought to be able to show how much money we made by spending that $150,000 without going into what you're saying. And I agree that's what has to happen at bottom line, but we got to know, I think we should know how much money we made, therefore we can apply the difference to all those things you're talking about.
I remember a payday candy bar. So
I was going to bring.
They went up 8% and we went up 5%, and
in this case,
still losing.
We were having to buy way more than what we expected to buy, so we should have been able to produce more this year to offset some of that cost. So, and Pete can talk more, but we had the plant down all the way through July, so we didn't make a drop of water. And from our discussions in previous months, it costs us more at this point, since we still have, we still have the full staff, and we still have a water treatment plant that we were fixing and all that. To purchase 100% on top of having all those other expenses, we were losing money at that rate. So we didn't make any extra just because we bought more this year.
We're doing a rate study.
Any other questions? Okay.
Rate study.
Sarah, thank you so much. Very thorough.
Wait, she's got one more.
One more. Where does she got on?
Disposal,
15,000.
yeah, 15,000. Our disposal cost, which is our landfill
Oh,
cost, went up by is over budget by about 15,000. The amount we charged Douglas County, I had room there to increase that revenue for that, so that'll offset it.
That's what happens when you get used to watching the screen.
I'm glad you brought that up. Sarah, let me ask you a question. Do you have a summary sheet of the actual impact to the budget? That would cover all of these pieces?
All these amendments?
Breaking out a calculator and doing it up myself?
I can do that. I'll do that. I mean,
Could you
that's
do
it would be citywide, and I can sum it by revenue, expense, and fund balance.
I think that gives us a big picture, and of course, these are the details.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. Abby, Parks and Recreation. I'm sorry.
Respectful of time. No, it was really a great day. The weather was perfect. You couldn't ask for a better day. It rained at 10:20. And the event ended at 10, so it didn't get much much better than that. I'm going to try to make it onto the consent agenda today. I have just one item that is a community development grant for the West Georgia Shrine Club. If you will recall, the Shriners use one of our park facilities after they finish their activities with the Gold Rush Parade. This is a request for only $150 for the rental of Powell Park. That's the only expense that they have. They pretty much take care of the rest of their activities and events themselves. And so this is just a simple request for a grant for $150.
And we're not.
The best way to do this, the clean way to do this, is to actually bill them. So we would cut them a check, and then we would bill them to pay the expenses. From an accounting standpoint, that's better. Is that correct? Yes. All right. I always love to pass stuff off.
So we bill them and then we pay it?
Right. They pay it, yeah, with the money that we get. Well, the purpose of this, and of course, I'm just on the tail end of this community grant thing. I was not the one that developed this. It just kind of came to my doorstep. You know, lovely. But it's basically to be able to better account for how we expend funds as it relates to allowing people to use the facilities. And so this will help us put it in a line item in the budget every year, and you can visualize what it is that we're spending and or missing out on as far as revenue.
Questions? Okay.
That's all I have.
Great job. Cabot.
Oh, yeah.
I wanted to take a vacation.
Flashy.
Good afternoon again. What you have before you is the bid results, if you will. Parks and Rec put out the bid for the sound and lighting for 2017 at the Mill Amphitheater. We received 2 bid responses by the deadline.
Yeah, they were real close, weren't they?
Yes.
I was thinking they were pretty close.
So they were certainly on 2 extremes, if you will. You have the numbers before you and the dates of the events that the respondents and the specifications that they submitted based on. Parks and Recreation staff is recommending Pop Audio.
Why? I can't imagine why.
Y'all can't, the public has.
Crazy.
Yep. What went wrong there?
I think any questions that we all
they'll be doing work next week, so I'd feel a little bit more comfortable just with the way the weather is right now, just kind of closing out with them and then setting a date from there.
Okay, so can we, that would be the June.
Vicky, what?
Be part of it, but we certainly use that as the kickoff for Georgia City's week. This week has been certainly filled. Certainly, our stormwater department, they were out on clean water campaign. Tuesday, Chris's division. A lunch to bring people in over there and just to get them out and enjoy the park. So, and Saturday is the Art Fest, and that's certainly been incorporated into it. We got the businesses involved this week. There were like trivia nights. We tried to bring them in and engage them, which is, again, always the best part, if you can bring in the business community, the arts community, and the departments as a whole to get out and talk and educate people about the services you provide. So when anyone here, when they're free, if they want to get out and go on over to watch or take part in Touch a Truck and all that the police have to educate the community on, but just wanted to make you aware of the activities that were going on this week.
Great job to whoever.
But
But
yes.
a lot.
In the paper, just to also get the word out as well, so.
Yeah, and if we want that green market to go well, I think we need to help publicize it. I mean, I put one simple little thing on Facebook about it, how easy it is to share, and I saw like 3 other people share it, or put 3 other names, whether it was Jacqueline Dawson. I know she knows lots of people, so I thought if her name goes on there, other people will see it. But we can do our little part in helping advertise that, because a lot of people don't know what's going on. I mean, it just started. But
this is our second year that I'm aware of.
yeah, I want to
that we've
see
done.
that be successful, because it's wonderful to have the fresh fruits and vegetables and some crafts and things. So,
all right, thank you.
What day did you say, didn't you say Wednesday, isn't it?
Well, no, there were activities every day this week.
Oh, I'm talking about the farmer's market.
The farmer's market was on Tuesday.
Yeah.
4 to 7.
Tuesday from 4 to 7.
Yeah, you said Wednesday, that's the reason
I'm
I was
sorry,
trying to- yeah.
Tuesday was
I
the farmer's
thinking-
market, Wednesday was the library.
Oh,
They had a
okay.
family game night.
Okay.
And Touch a Truck is going on as we speak. So,
Okay.
all right, thank you.
Thank you, Vicki. Tab G.
This is a the week, May 7th through the 13th, and she would like, and I would like, for us to do that proclamation for the municipal clerks and let them know how much we do appreciate them, because we have an excellent clerk.
We do. We have
appreciate-
And
Would be, but I want to say it while the chief is saying that he wants to do this, I want to do it as well. I wanted to bring up that since I've been on this council, every month we get these big giant binders of paper. Now, I don't get a binder, but our city clerk takes time, because I don't get it because I asked not to get it. I take mine and I scan it so that I can work from a digital copy, but then I end up having to bring all these pages because, as you may have noticed the whole time we've been up here, people have been flipping through pages, and some things we have, some things we don't. So what I would like the council to consider is looking at a way to use some of the technology and some of the software platforms that are available to city clerks, where she would be able to manage our agenda, and we would have it digitally up here. We could get rid of these dinosaur monitors that flicker most of the time they're up here, and we would each have our own screen right here in front of us. So that's something that I would like us to consider.
Like a mini iPad or an iPad?
Something like that. One council person said to me they like to make notes. There is some software, I think it's Surface Pro, that uses pens. You can make notes on that. I see this being used in other cities and other governments. I think it's going to be coming here anyway. So I would like staff to start taking a look at how we can move in that direction sooner rather than later.
The city of Douglasville uses an agenda software.
Save a lot of trees, wouldn't it?
Well, the reason and let me say too, I looked at a 5-year, just some general numbers, and based on some of the conversations I had with the clerk, and she does other things, but just the time she dedicates to doing this is about $45,000 over a 5-year period. 111,000 sheets of paper. I have no idea how much toner, color, and black toner that's used for this. And that's just, those are bare numbers, because the reality is there's a lot more that happens all through the month that we are sent and that we get. And she does the amount of work that she has to do. And she told me a couple of days ago, you were here till 7:30 at night putting together some of these things. But that's not one day. She spends probably a solid 4 days of time putting these 10 packets together. That's time she could be doing other things. I'm not saying she needs 4 days off, although she works really hard. I'm just saying that she actually has to work
It's a lot of
some
man-hours.
very long hours to keep up with her job. And I think she does a great job, but I think that we ought to ask staff to look at ways we can move toward this.
Get out of the paper business and into the digital world.
What do you think?
I'm fine with that. Whatever you folks want, we'll definitely look at, and I don't know that I'll have the information ready for Tuesday, but I will do my best. On Tuesday, I'm going to task the clerk with finding out about the software. I will find out about the Surface Pros or one of those and see what those cost, because, yeah.
Pads they're using.
And
Correct.
Really what I'd like you to look at and be able to present to us is, I see this as a huge cost-saving initiative. I'm never really for spending a lot of money. You all had a number of conversations with me. Also, I would mention that I had talked with our city attorney. There's one other benefit to this that I can think of, and that is that we get open records requests. We've had several since I've been here. And I'd rather my personal devices not be subject to open records. Now, that's a smaller piece of this, but I think it's important. And I wanted the city attorney to speak about that just for a minute if he could.
Sure, I mean, you're exactly right that it is always better for you to keep your personal messages separate from your city messages, so that somewhere down the road somebody doesn't have to be sorting through all your personal messages. In fact, we had a presidential candidate that had that problem last year, and it's always better to keep it completely separate. It's much neater, and that would be another added benefit to have digital devices that segregate your city business from your personal business.
You know, and I realize, when
Cost alone would be a huge cost savings.
plus I know myself.
Four?
I only see 3 listed here.
Okay.
Okay. Any questions on that?
I'm glad.
During the cleanup week that we had, it was brought to my attention in the last several years that there's been several thousands of dollars that the city had to pay to get rid of these tires. And looking and asking questions, nobody can determine what code, nobody from the city, that is, can determine what code we use to ask these folks to get rid of the tires. There's at least 3 places in town that store tires outside with no cover, that in the next 3 months will be infested with mosquitoes. And the question that I ask is, why can't we do something with them? Well, EPD said, and, quite frankly, I really don't care what EPD says. This is the city of Villa Rica. We have it written in our codes what you can do with tires or what you can't do with them. So why can't we determine those things in black and white writing and allow the people in the codes department to understand what they're supposed to be doing? And now it really comes down to the point of determining through Mr. Mecklin exactly how far we can go and push these things, but, there's no reason to have roughly 350 tires inside the city limits that have been there for at least 3 months.
That's the first I'm hearing of it. The short answer to that is that there's not. You're to have a code that says you can't do it.
That's what I mean. We have a code in our, I think it's Unified Development Code about it. We had in the past several years a code that the code enforcement people were instructed to go either give them a ticket, and I think it was written under the Unified Development Code. But then in the past several months, I've been told that we have to go by EPD. So that's the reason I'm bringing it up for discussion today on exactly which way and what are we going to do.
Well, I guess my question is, are you saying we don't have an ordinance or a code for this?
It's right there. So can't we enforce this code?
In the UDC.
That's the reason I'm asking the question. We're not enforcing any code right now. And if you don't, I can show you 3 places that have them.
Well, this section 5.25 is clearly not being followed by several places that I can think of off the top of my head. So if we were just enforcing that, it seems like to me that would be...
All I'm asking is that we give guidance, and with Mr. Mecklin's influence, give guidance to the city manager on how and what we need to do with, and then go from there.
Now, somebody notices it and calls on it, then we do handle it then, is that?
That's correct for the time being.
Okay, thank you.
That's right, and I think, I would say also that this is just one snippet of the overall code. I need to take a look to make sure that there are not other provisions in here that say something different from that.
Correct.
I would also add that in most of the other jurisdictions that I've been, a lot of this as relates to tires will also handle under what is the property maintenance code, and there is a model ordinance that the state already drafts that you really, you just have to adopt it, and you can address all of that in there. So it's...
So it doesn't have to be specific to tires, it can be anything?
Exactly, any trash and debris that's
Whatever
on property, it really can be a catch-all to address all of that. And it's really already there to, DCA makes it available for local governments, so...
We'll find that.
Provide it to the attorney to review.
I think it's under nuisance.
We may already even have that.
Correct.
Let me ask a question, and just because I don't know. Why are we complaint-driven as opposed to if our codes people, and we have 3 of them or 2.5, are observing something like this? I mean, tires can be a problem in a lot of ways. So maybe somebody can just tell me why we're only complaint-driven.
I can address that real simple. In the past years, we had one person to cover the whole city. And asking that person to go out and if you look at a book that's pretty much that thick on what you can and can't do as far as codes are concerned, that was their primary responsibility. And it got to that point to where it had to be complaint-driven to keep up. For instance, you got grass on one side of it, then you got grass on undeveloped property, you got grass on property where houses are abandoned, you got all kinds of things of that nature, and pretty much the guy's gonna have to sit, or the person's gonna have to sit down and study more time than he is gonna be out riding and trying to find this stuff. So it had to be complaint driven, but you just said there's 3 people, and somewhere down the road, I think we probably need to sit and look at, but in my thought process is we got to be specific on what these guys are going to be looking for to determine what's going to be the best course of the city to move forward. I don't know the answer to that. Mr. Mecklen's going to have to have us that with a lot of information.
I think everything you said is true, but there's one other point that needs to be considered in this, is that if you send a roving band of codes enforcement people out through the city citing people for mistakes, you can expect to have many of your constituents upset about the citations that they have received. Correct. And will be contacting the governing authority to ask why they're getting cited.
Yeah.
Warning type thing. You don't necessarily have
Right.
to hammer people. I've noticed some of the area of Fullerville that I've tried to bring to attention is cleaned up a little bit more. I don't think I've even seen a toilet sitting out in the yard lately. Some of those, so code enforcement must be getting over there some.
Well, I think
They went up on Wilson Street.
You
Berlin's
got it,
point,
squeaky wheel, you gotta be squeaky wheel.
he was talking about, ma'am,
I said they must have went up on Wilson Street then, because it's terrible up there.
okay.
We've been talking about that for years, all that
Well,
junk up there.
I think what Verlin, if I understood, was saying was that we would have criteria. And I guess my point is, I understand, and I really, David, that's what I thought was probably the biggest concern, is that you would have, folks out doing the, just every little thing. Jaywalking. I remember somebody brought up Barney Fife. That's one of the funniest episodes there is. But I'm thinking we need to look at criteria, but our local businesses, and when it comes to tires and junk cars and stuff like that, those folks ought to be a little more responsible to the code than your average citizen who might have made a mistake. So, I don't know how we want to handle that, but I think staff should look at how to prioritize and how to put together some sort of a criteria-based plan for us to take a look at.
Getting the right people in place, giving them some training to use good judgment in making citations, those are the keys. And if we have the people in place to do it now and get them trained, I think we've got good people in position. And just get them trained up and set them free.
We don't really have 3 people.
We don't.
We have 2.5.
2 1/4, I think.
Quarter.
2 1/4. A little bit with us, but most time he is there.
What I think.
To a draft of the proposed change, which will essentially eliminate the Board of Zoning Appeals. There was one initial mistake in the first draft, but I think I sent out a corrected draft, and that should be ready to go for the first approval. It will have to be done at both the May and the June meeting. You cannot finally approve it until June.
Okay.
It's self-explanatory.
I don't have any questions.
Any questions? Okay, I have.
update on where we are on that, or?
I did want to mention, just for the sake of adding it to the agenda for Tuesday night, that that Mr. Berry said that he was going to be here on Tuesday night, and that he would like to be able to make a presentation to the council and to the public about what he envisions the process of selecting a new city manager is, and I think it would be well worth our while to hear what his experience has been in other venues to make that happen. So I did want to let you know that that needs to be on the agenda.
So where would be the best place to put him in here?
Probably up front.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, I agree.
Will he be staying, or will he just make a presentation? Will we meet with him?
I don't know. I think that my brief communication with him was that he did want to make a presentation in open session. If there was a need to meet in executive session to discuss any of the candidates whose resumes he's already looked at, that we would leave an opportunity to do that. I mean, I'm not sure that there will be a need, but if there is, then we want to leave that opportunity.
I'd like to respect his time and try to put it as close to the beginning of the agenda as possible, but it won't make a lot of difference if we end up adding the executive session, but.
I don't know if he'll be staying here in Villa Rica or not. He travels around in an RV vehicle.
We can park his.
Or not.
Got a water and sewer hookup back there?
I'll see if I can find out.
We did that one time. I'm trying to remember when it was. Y'all, I think y'all took a RV from a drug guy on the road and parked it out back, and somebody come through and had to stay somewhere, and he put him out back.
I don't remember that, sir.
The land disturbance, the construction drawings for Dairy Queen were permitted, LDPs were issued. Let me see what else is currently underway.
Hawthorne.
Hawthorne, the apartments at Hawthorne, we're trying to work with them on readdressing the site since they're doing an expansion into phase 2 to make sure that all the buildings are properly sequenced.
Here's you know what I'm fixing to ask you, right?
What's that?
Did you ever find out?
Anything that we reviewed, but it just appears to me to just be a very grand landscaping project.
Wow.
That's what I said when I saw it. It looked really nice, the extent of the work that they were doing, but usually landscaping, it's typical, if that's all that they're doing, that's exempt from the regular permitting process.
But if someone makes a
renovation, of course, if they're doing a demo, they need to get a permit.
And we had that today also. A gentleman came in on a demolition on the house that Mr. Chambers was in with a tree fell on it. He came in today to get a permit to bring that down.
What is the proposed?
One that we've looked at plans for, it was medical related. There was an office that they were doing an expansion on. If
it has a blast front on it.
I believe that's the one.
Because I can't see a permit, and the neighbors are.
Reach out and remind everyone. I'll send code enforcement by just to double check to make sure everyone that we've issued permits on, that they have them posted on site.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Land by the post office, up on South Carroll. I've been asked about that.
Walmart.
Before
Yeah.
you get to Walmart.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know where they park the post office truck, you know.
Post
they go
office
in and
hub
out.
is up there on the right.
It's not the post office over here, it's the one behind Walmart, that's the distribution center for the mail for this part of Georgia.
If you go into if you go in
on the right.
South Carroll to Walmart, it's before you get to Walmart, where you go down there for the post office.
I'd have to double check on that one. The only thing that I even know that's even close to that vicinity is more residential, not anything
It's
commercial.
after you
Yeah.
pass. It's on the right side going up. Let's see, it's before you get across the bridge. isn't it?
No, just
Right past.
Okay, right past it.
I will follow up and
There's a
let you know
post office
what that
distribution
was.
center buried down in there, down in that area.
A lot of folks don't
They
know
just
this.
been asking me, and I'm like, them, I don't know. And they say, you on the council, you don't know? No, I don't.
I find out by reading the Times Georgian sometime. I go, whoa.
So
who knew
what we
that was
can
going
do is put out lists of, when land disturbance permits are issued. I think a lot of people think that they come back before you guys as opposed to them actually being administrative in nature. So we can get that information.
When is the Holiday Inn Express supposed to open up?
They told us that they expect it to be June sometimes. We're actually in the process of reviewing their signage. Actually, they're probably preparing for some variances on the signage, but that's what they have told us.
See, those are great things to put on the city map.
Okay.
It's probably not for you. And just wanted some updates on the North Loop and the roundabouts that we have. One at Punkintown, the one at the North Loop, and the one over at 101. Could we get some updates on that?
Absolutely.
And not that it matters a whole lot to me, but somebody did ask me about the Starbucks.
And so the Starbucks, they initially came in and applied for variances. It might have been the December of 2016. What we have right now is there are some changes as it relates to what some of those proposed uses that were going to go in that particular shopping center. I spoke to the engineering firm that represents them the beginning of this week, and they're saying, they're still trying to change out what some of those other uses were going to be, and that's all I can tell you right now.
Okay. I just thought it had been a while since we heard anything on that.
It has been a while, and really this week was the first time that I'd heard anything again. We were periodically asking, and then just say, hey, we don't really know, but again, it's about trying to find those tenants, get that final mix of tenants that's going to go in there.
So we may not get a Moe's.
Moe's wasn't the one that was in question. It was the two interior ones. I hadn't heard anything on the Moe's, so I don't want to give the impression, but I hadn't heard anything on changes on the restaurant, Moe's and Starbucks, but it's the other two that were in there.
So the roundabouts, North Loop, if you...
Information.
Sure.
Chief knows all about those.
I do, yes ma'am, I'm learning. There will be a meeting. Tim Paget called me about it. I think they've got them coming in to speak, one of the civic clubs. So I think he's landing, the people are landing, the ambulance folks. Medevac. They're coming to the meeting. Next week, and hopefully be able to put somebody in place within 30 days.
Thank you, Chief. I appreciate that.
Okay.
Sooner the better.
Okay, consent.
ahead, didn't I? Sorry.
Tab,
I think that can be on a consent agenda.
Okay.
Okay.
okay, tab D, obviously we want to hear. Okay. Okay, now, item 3.
I'd like to wait for that.
Okay. Tab E,
Your consent for the Shriners is,
Presentation.
That was $150. I'd say, yeah.
Consent.
consent, okay. Tab E, Parks and
We didn't select it, so I guess we can't,
we have to vote.
we're going to have to vote on that, I guess.
Yeah, we did not, that's correct, so well, that cannot be on consent agenda. Tab G. Yeah.
We'd like to do a little show with
Meeting. So we can take,
Yeah, we have to.
we can pass papers, can't we?
We can say yay.
That chair needs to like get out of here.
I know.
Yay, let's go home, yay.
Sit down in the hole.
Charlie, I think it's hard to carry all my paperwork out.
I like the idea